What's going on, guys? James Livingston here, back again, bringing you another video here, going over certain concepts in the market, and one of the crucial ones that I feel like a lot of people get confused, and I need to identify some key differences with our support and resistance, supply and demand. A lot of people will look at these essentially the same way, and while they are similar in certain concepts, there is bigger differences to just understand and know about them. So when it comes to support and resistance, the main difference between support and resistance and supply and demand is going to be how it's used to determine whether to enter or exit a trade, whether enter a buy or enter a sell position. The support and resistance is essentially going to be a specific price point that has been tested over and over again over the course of time. It could date back years. It's a support or a resistance that has always seemed to react. It's a reactionary level in a way. Supply and demand is more of a smart money concept. It's essentially where big money is looking to get in or to get out, based on kind of the liquidity and the wicks and all that kind of stuff. So support resistance is really a common area that's been tapped on multiple times. It's a proven area to find. So we're going to go into the 4 hour here. I'm going to show you just because I feel like the 4 hour is going to give us a better showing of this. So on the 4 hour time frame, we can see clear as day when we look at this chart that we have this area right here. We have an area right here. And we also have an area right here, right? So we got three separate touch points all in the same spot. And even over to here before it broke and started trending up, you can see the exact same spot as well. So we put a line right there across, a stationary line just like this. We can identify that just about at that same exact spot every single time we get a reaction. You can see here, this one didn't quite touch it. It was a little bit behind, so we'll take that one off. But even before, when this was a support, and this is what usually happens, this happens with support and resistance as well as supply and demand, where you have, when it was a support previously, if we lose that support, it then becomes a resistance point. Supports turn to resistance, resistances turn to support. It's just with the market structure, with the ebbs and flows of the market. So when you have, again, you had this area where we had three different touch points. There's a 4 hour candle, so across a couple of days, really, we had the same exact spot bouncing, and then pushed up just like that. Once we came back down under it and we tried to go retest it, didn't quite get to that exact spot. But that is also another reason why you can kind of use the same concept, in my opinion, to see those supply zones, where we had demand, obviously support, being down here. It's a very similar concept to supply and demand. But, in a way, it's just a specific price point. So like right here, you can see it's about 2720. So 2,720 was essentially that spot on this chart here. And actually, if you want to be really specific with it, it arguably probably could have been more towards 2,709, 2,710, as that's where we have almost the common ground right here. We have a touch point right here, almost a touch point right there. Here's the retest right there, just like that, as well as touch point there, rejection, touch point there, rejection, touch point there, rejection at first, but then it kind of made it back into a support right here before it continued on up in a trend as we're on right now. So that's mainly how you identify like support and resistances. They are specific price points. Now when it comes to supply and demand, you are looking for, rather than these areas, you're looking for the reactionary areas. So in this case, that area could have also been considered a supply area. As you can see, every time we came up to it, we had some harsh reactions to the downside, right? So we can consider that a supply zone. Demand is going to be the opposite. It's going to be that area where when we come down to it, we have the large kind of trend shifting movements. That's really the biggest difference between support and resistance and supply and demand. You have the kind of structure moving differences there, or reactions there, sorry. So like right here, pull down to it, tap this area, and we ran up, from 2,550 up to 2,685 is 100 plus point move on gold, or in this case I think that would be the equivalent of like 1,085 pips. I might be wrong there, to be honest, but it's a much harsher move to the upside. Same thing could be said about this area right here. You can see if we drag it across, it's a very common touch point where we react off of that area and we have large moves off of it. So anytime you see these areas where we have those large moves off of, you can consider those supply and demand zones. Supports and resistances are going to kind of be laid out really anywhere. You can kind of find them. One right here, we have multiple touch points. Right here, right here, right here. Got a little bit of mumbo jumbo up in here. Right there, right there. Right there, resistance, almost resistance right there. Resistance turned to support, just like that. Came up to the next resistance / supply zone. Turned that into a support / demand zone. Continued up. So the main key takeaway here is supply and demand is going to be more smart money movements. It's going to be where smart money, big money, institutional buyers are going to look to put in. They're buying at the demand. They're buying where they feel is a good value on the stock or the asset. And same thing for the short side. They are selling when they feel like it's overpriced or where it's getting into an area where it should come back down into in a supply zone. Same thing with or opposite thing with support and resistance. Sorry, these words getting mumbled up here. Same thing with support and resistance in a way where you can have a lot more support and resistance spots compared to supply and demand zones. The supply and demand zones are going to be very specific. They're going to be very reactionary. Like I said, they're usually trend shifting areas, whereas support and resistances can be in the midst of a trend. They're just price points that have historically given bounces. You can see right here, just above that demand zone. See, we had a reaction right there, but a couple of these wicks kind of hovering above the demand zone. We had one spot here, kind of like a little bit of a gap spot right here. Boom, boom, boom. And then same thing, like we were saying, here it is. I mean, even right here, like where you see this bottoming out candle where it came down and it had the reaction there, small reaction, bounced up. You can see as we go across historically, that same area offers the same kind of resistance or kind of chop action because it is a support / resistance zone. Again, if it goes over the support, over the resistance, that turns to a support. If it goes under the support, that turns to a resistance. Simple things like that. But that's really, that's the main difference, guys. It's really not anything crazy. I look at supply and demand zones as more of the larger frame kind of picture. Where are those heavy reaction areas on the weekly time frame, the daily time frame, the 4 hour, maybe down to the 1 hour. And then as you get into that under the 4 hour, then you can also start marking off support and resistances because they're going to be more so on the smaller time frames, but they're also historical. They're going to be areas where you can literally put the line on there where you see a lot of touch points. I'll bet you if you go back, you will see that same area get touched over and over again, have those reactions off of it. So, you can use that also as kind of a back tester. If you put a level down, you're not sure about it, just zoom out, go back a little bit, see how does it react at that area. Is it a valuable area to put on your chart or a valuable support or resistance spot? And my recommendation, what I do usually is I label these, so if I'm looking out on the 4 hour time frame, I'm going to label it a 4 hour. I do key level. It doesn't really matter if you do 4 hour support, 4 hour resistance. Just remember that even though it's a support now, it could become a resistance later if it drops below it, or vice versa. If it's a resistance now, it can become a support later. So I just put key level. I feel like key level for me is the broader way of saying support resistance. So that's really it for this video, guys. I just wanted to make sure we go over exactly what the difference is here when it comes to supply and demand versus support and resistance, because there's a difference. When you look out on these broader time frames, you can clearly see where those reactionary levels are, right? You can see that clearly in this spot here, we've had reaction back to the downside. Therefore, it is a supply zone. Same thing with the demands. We have a couple demand zones here. We have one here where you shifted the trend. We started to pull back, had a little retrace, and then boom, pushed it way up, came back down, you know, it bounced off this area, which at the moment we didn't really know was necessarily a demand zone, but as time has went on, we've noticed that that area is a reactionary area. You know, so anytime price action comes back down into this area, I'm going to personally start looking for potential buy signals with the appropriate supporting indicators. Are we getting a reversal candle setting up? Are we getting a bullish engulfing? You know, doji candle? Are we starting to get a three-leg extension? You know, we have a reversal, we push up, we pull back, retrace, set in a higher low, continue higher. You know, all these signals go together. So yeah, nonetheless, guys, that's it for the video. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. If you did, please hit that like button, comment down below, let me know what you guys think, and of course subscribe if you're new, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.